But I'm going to get started because I know a lot of you people will watch this on the replay. So, what we're going to talk about today is how you look at Class A properties as opposed to Class B and Class C, how you vet them, and why in this market we think that they are better, or at least a better type of investment. So, the first thing to look at when you look at new construction, we'll separate new construction from Class A. So the first thing to look at in new construction is what is the business plan. So whenever a property is built, usually it's built by a developer and they don't plan on owning the property long term. And that's why they actually get short-term loans with a high interest rate because they know they'll get a big pop at the end. And a lot of times they get in trouble when they hold a property too long or they can't find a seller. So that's actually why we don't do new development because it's inherently more risky. And that's why we're actually getting such a great deal on Cabana because the seller tried to sell it for 6 months and wasn't able to. And they have these very expensive interest rate payments on this super expensive construction loan. And finally, they decided to throw in the towel and basically sell it to us at cost. So we got a property where all the risk was taken off the table because it's already built, but we're going to get similar as new construction like results or returns. So the two types of business plans that you can have is called lease up or value add. So you're pretty familiar with value add. You go in, you do some renovations. For new construction, usually you don't do too many things. So for us, we're doing washer dryer, we're adding some covered parking, some reserved parking spots, and updating some of the outdoor areas. But we're not touching the interiors because they're all brand new and they're pretty good. They're not only is it new construction, but it's class A construction. And in general, all new construction or almost all new construction will be class A because it's so expensive to build. It doesn't make sense to build something in the middle of the market because it's marginally more expensive to build for the top of the market, but you get way more in terms of sales price and rents. So typically anything new construction will be class A, unless for some reason they have some affordable housing or something there. But even then, they'll plan on building class A. So the second type of business plan that you could have with new construction is called lease ups. It's where you as the property manager, you as the buyer will go and you plan on buying the property and your business plan is to improve operations. So you see a property and maybe it's not leased at all. Maybe it's leased up to 70, 80%. And you're like, oh, I know how to run apartment complexes. I can do a way better job. So you don't plan on doing a ton of value add, you just plan on doing lease up. For our deal in Kanto, Cabana in Kanto, we're doing a combination. We're doing lease ups because it's 87%, and we think we can do better to mid to high 90s. And we're doing the value add with the washer dryers, the outdoor spaces, and all that. So when you're looking at new construction, it's very, very important to look at the comparable properties. We always do that for even the value add older stuff that we buy, but it's really important to look at the comparable properties. So what kind of amenities do they have? How big are they? How well are they renting out? And not only do you have to look at comparable properties, but you have to look at what is being built in the future. Because if you're buying this brand new spanking property and then all of a sudden there's going to be 10 more other properties just like it in the near future, then you're going to start competing versus each other. And you can't really build new amenities, right? So then there'd be a race to the bottom in terms of rent. So specifically for the Phoenix market, there actually is some new properties that are being built in 23, 24. And when we were looking at our property, that definitely made us think a little bit deeper about it. However, because we're basically getting it at cost, we're going to be able to outcompete other people. So for example, we can make our two bedroom 1600. Yeah, for those in California, that sounds super cheap. But yeah, 1,600 for a two bedroom and still make a small profit, while everyone else is going to have to be 1,900 for a two bedroom. So your basis, your purchase price is super important. So for and that's also called net absorption. How much can an area absorb in terms of new construction and vacancy? However, there's going to be very little new construction across the US in the next couple years that comes live in 25, 26, 27. And that's for a couple reasons. One, construction costs are super expensive right now, right? It's a combination of materials costs going up, like lumber, uh, supply chain, uh, just trying to get washers, dryers, and all that stuff. Uh, and dishwashers are actually really hard to get right now. And number two, the banks that lend to new construction are small regional banks. You know what's going on with them? They're busy trying not to fail. They're not going to put something risky like development on their books right now because they're really just trying to do only safe investments right now or not put anything out at all and try to keep all their money in so that they don't fail, right? And three, if you are able to get a loan, it's going to be something crazy like 15%. And that just doesn't make sense because you can't make numbers work like that given that we were in a 0% interest rate environment a year ago. So potentially in the future, if we stay at high interest rates, people will be able to come around and make the numbers work. But right now, given that steep rise in interest rates, the numbers just don't work at that amount. And number four, and this is unique to Phoenix, this is actually hot off the presses. So last week, Phoenix passed a law that said any new development has to show that they're going to have enough water for 100 years. 100. Now, no one can do that right now, and it's going to take a couple years for people to be able to figure out, okay, here's the law. How do we follow it? And so I think that's going to cause a complete freeze in the market for the next couple of years. And even though I never want to root for water issues, this is for us in the short term. This is really good because that means the Phoenix market is going to be supply constrained. And because there's so many jobs and so much net migration into the area, then that means that, you know, the demand is going to go up, but supply is going to stay down. So it means our apartment complex is going to be desirable, and especially for someone institutional that wants to buy the property. And we'll talk about why that's important in a second. So very low new construction after 23, 24, because the stuff that's coming live in 23, 24, it really started in 2019, 2020, and so on. So uh, the other thing to look at is the reputation of the builder, right? So, how are their current properties that they've built doing? Construction quality, amenities, rents, and so we are buying from a builder called Greenlight, and they have a brand called Cabana, and all of those properties are doing very well. And that's despite them being in areas that are not as affluent. So Glendale, Arizona, which we actually own a property in. Glendale's doing very well, but it's not as nice as Goodyear. So we're excited to be able to bring this like Class A new construction project to Goodyear. So the other thing to look at is just kind of Class A in general, not necessarily. You can have Class A. So when we sell the property in 5 years, it's going to be a Class A property, but it's not going to be new construction anymore. So what do you look for in those Class A, not new construction? And it's similar to Class A new construction. So location is super important, right? If you in LA, right? If you have South LA is not as nice as the rest of LA. If you have Class A there, you're going to worry about crime. You're worry about tenants, and so it's not a good place to put it, right? As opposed to putting Class A in Beverly Hills. I actually call Goodyear, Arizona, the Beverly Hills of Phoenix. So Class A in Beverly Hills makes a ton of sense because people are going to be able to afford it. The amenities are nice, and it's going to be very desirable to put in there. Now, we talked about quality and construction, right? How do their buildings hold up? Do you really have to worry about maintenance? You shouldn't if it was just built. But you can see the quality of the paint, and this is something you really want to look at for Class A because people notice these things in Class A very quickly, right? If there's paint, if the paint is chipping really quickly, or things are falling apart, you really have to keep things up. And if the qual if the quality of construction is low or they use cheap materials, it's going to be a lot more obvious quicker than other places. Look at the amenities, right? So if you look at the pictures for Cabana and Kanto, you're like, wow, it's a humongous pool. I actually love the gym. I love that little tire flipping thing. I really want one if I could fit it in my garage somehow. But it's you look at those amenities and you're like, wow, like those are nice, right? And we're gonna add some stuff like maybe a volleyball court, pickleball court. So really trying to be like, hey, this is a place that you can treat like your home and something that you're gonna enjoy, right? There's enough stuff to do. Like a dog park is also something we're considering. And then also the tenant profile. So what kind of tenants are they able to afford it, right? So for us, we are looking at young professionals, young families, uh, people that are well educated. And actually, a quick story: I was at American College of Physicians as a sponsor, and showing people our brochure. And one person said, "Hey, if I invest in this deal, do I get a discount?" Because she was moving to Phoenix, and I was like, no, like we can't really do that, but it's very alluring or very exciting that a fellow physician wants to live in this place. So we have a very specific tenant profile. A lot of people moving out of California, and people that are priced out of housing. So an average mortgage with interest and taxes is 2,900 in Goodyear, and our average rents is 1,400. And average rents in Goodyear itself is 1,600. So there's just a huge delta for us to reach out to. Now, there's a couple reasons that we think that new construction, given the current market, is a great source. So when you are trying to sell the property, and we get this question a lot, like after 5 years, who do you think is going to buy this property? And the best buyers are institutional quality buyers. So there's a Blackstone, there's a JP Morgan Chase. And what a lot of people don't know is some of the biggest buyers of commercial real estate is actually health insurance funds or pension funds because they're sitting on large amounts of cash, but they may need to use that in the future. So they don't want to take anything risky. So they require two things. So a property that is less than 20 years old and something that is stabilized. By stabilized, they mean that the occupancy is above 95% for at least a period of time. And this is why the seller wasn't able to get kind of their premium price of 85 million because the property was not stabilized. And that's kind of our value add. We know how to run apartment complexes, and actually our property manager manages 3 other Cabana properties. So they really know what they're doing. So when we have the property and we have 5 years to add the value and stabilize it. So we know that that pool of buyers is going to be so much larger than the pool of buyers that our current seller had. Uh, the other big thing is we're taking a lot of execution risk off the table, meaning you have this big grand business plan and you're like, I'm going to add all this value add. Now that's great. And potentially you have this high IRR that you get, but it also involves a lot of risk. What if you can't get those cabinets that you want? What if you can't find the people to renovate? What if you spend all this money on renovations and then you hit a recession and people aren't willing to pay extra for recessed lighting or granite counters or stainless steel appliances, right? So by having something that's already built and renovated, we're taking a lot of execution risk off the table. It also means we're getting rid of a lot of the hidden expenses. So what are hidden expenses? Stuff like HVACs, roofs, electrical systems, right? Plumbing. All that stuff is under warranty. because they just did it, right? So either under warranty by the appliance maker or by the builder, right? They have to have it warranted for a certain amount of time. So we're able to kind of better plan and forecast for the future because we take a lot of this risk off the table. And obviously the downside is with the heavy value add, you have a much larger chance of upside, but that it comes along with a lot of risk. And now that we're heading towards a recessionary time, we think if we can take a majority of risk off the table, then we're willing to take a small decrease in returns. But I think there's still a lot of opportunity in this deal, and you'll see that in the sensitivity analysis. If the economy even improves a slight bit, we're gonna get like 17 plus IRR in this. But we want to predict that the economy will continue to be poor, maybe even get worse, and that makes us try to hit that 13 or 15%. So uh, the other thing is because we are in a nicer part of town, you're actually able to hire just much better talent, right? People that really know what they're doing, a much better property management. So across our portfolio and actually really across the US and people that own commercial real estate, high quality property managers are really hard to find because unfortunately it's a thankless job, right? Kind of like a lot of things in medicine. People just expect things to go right, and they only complain when things go wrong. Sorry. So when you do something good, whatever, that's expected. But as soon as you make the smallest little error or something takes a little bit longer than usual, people will complain, and that's doubly true for property managers. So because we have a higher end new construction Class A property, this is something that people love to work at, visit every day, and it just makes them happy, and they get to work with tenants that are young professionals and families, and just more appealing and kind of better work-life balance for them as well, as opposed to some of the kind of Class B, Class C. You're working with a tougher crowd, and it's a little bit more difficult. So the other thing, and we have noticed this all the time, whenever you buy a property, just across our portfolio, a lot of people are put into it, especially when you go to sell. You care more about getting your numbers to look good, and so maybe you lower your standards. You don't check credit as much. So almost always after the first year, there's a string of evictions because. The people that were put in at the very last minute by the seller, maybe they wouldn't have passed your stringent criteria. And so the nice thing about Class A and new construction is that because it's kind of on the higher end, you worry less about evictions, you worry less about bad debt, meaning that you're not able to collect on the rent. Now, it's always there a little bit, but it seems to be less of an issue. And a lot of times people will say, okay, Pranay, like we're headed towards a recession. Isn't Class A the first that's going to hurt? And you're right, it is the first to hurt, but it is Class A in Class A locations and areas. So San Francisco, Los Angeles, Chicago, New York. Class A is hurting there. And where are those people moving? They're moving to Class A in Phoenix, in Texas, in Florida. Now, think about Los Angeles. So I was in a 2 bedroom not that long ago, and it was 3,000 plus, right, for a 2 bedroom, and it wasn't brand new. It was okay. It wasn't super nice, but we're putting our 2 bedrooms in Phoenix for 1,700. So if I did that choice and moved to Phoenix, I wouldn't do a Class B, right? Class A is almost half of what I was paying right now. So of course I would try to move into the nice area. So all these people, all this net migration that are moving in, they're moving into Class A. So Class A actually in the Sun Belt is doing very well comparatively to elsewhere. And we're going to see that kind of net migration move into that area. So uh, the other big thing in properties right now is insurance premiums. We actually had one of our properties where insurance went up, doubled. They kind of had some issues with hurricanes. But yeah, insurances across the US for properties are going up. Actually, just recently, AIG AIG, Allstate decided they're not going to insure anyone in California anymore. Anyone at all. So no fire insurance, no flood insurance, nothing. So they'll still take care of the current people, but they're not going to bring in any new clients. So insurance is just so difficult to get. But because you have a new property and it's super up to date with all the recent the fire regulations, has sprinklers, has all this stuff, you're actually able to get insurance for a reasonable amount. Well, first, you're able to get insured, which is a big issue. A lot of people are not able to get insurance or they're underinsured. Oh, and then two, the insurance premiums are actually at a decent amount. So something that's affordable because the property's pretty new and right, you're taking a lot of risk off the table because you don't have to worry about all these things because you have really thought of the flood regulations, the fire regulations, and really everything seems more reasonable. So it kind of saves you money in the long run, and there's less likely things to go wrong, and that's why you're getting a decreased premium. So overall, we really like new construction. We say that if you're trying to get results different from everyone else is looking at Class B value add in kind of Texas and Florida, and that's kind of what everyone is looking at. And so that's why we're trying to do something different. So our last deal, which was with the same sponsor, Sunrise, was Class B 120 units, much smaller than we normally do, but that deal's killing it because the competition for that was less. And we had some competition for this deal, but it's a deal that we worked with the seller for 6 months and we got $21 million discount, basically bought it at cost, despite the builder taking years of building it and taking all this risk of permits, governments, all this stuff. So basically getting at cost from them. So I think at that point, new construction in Class A makes a ton of sense. But there's a couple other reasons that I had mentioned earlier. So I'll take a look at any questions there are. So it looks like don't have any questions. If anyone wants to put anything in there, we'll try to keep this one pretty short because I know all the last couple ones have been on the long side. Oh, got a question. Yeah, so Anne Marie has a great question. So, did we account for insurance premiums going up? Yes, we did. And we try to look at what people would get on a regular basis. But usually, insurances don't go up a ton on new construction. And Phoenix is relatively protected from natural disasters. Those are kind of two things that cause your insurance premiums to go up. So one, something happens at the property and like a roof or a fire or something, and two, there's a natural disaster. So one of our properties, there was a hurricane, and actually the property is relatively new, built in the 80s, and nothing happened, and we didn't have to claim anything but just because a hurricane came in that area, our premiums doubled. And so, natural disasters, so kind of in the south, the southeast, insurances, including Texas, have just gone through the roof. So, the nice thing about Phoenix and the reason we love it is two things. Insurance seems relatively reasonable, and two, there's a cap on how much your taxes go up. Now, taxes in Oklahoma, for example, our taxes went up 30%. And in Texas, our insurance has gone crazy. We even paid a consultant to estimate the taxes, and they were wrong by an order of magnitude. But I think Texas is hurting for money a little bit, so they're trying to squeeze us property owners. But what can you do about that? Any other questions? Yeah. So, do you require your tenants to buy their own minimum insurance? So, yes, we are looking at getting renters insurance. Yep, correct. Especially in a Class A. When I was renting like 3, 4 years ago, I had to get renters insurance as well. Yeah. And a couple of other properties have that as well. And it comes in handy because, if there's a fire, the renter's insurance will cover a lot of the interior stuff, and you're responsible for the outdoor stuff.